Hello, welcome to Actuary Voices, the podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. I'm your host for this episode, Ted Gotsch, and today we will be speaking to Will Behnke, the Academy's Risk Management and Financial Reporting Council's Public Policy Manager, as well as Lisa Slotznick, Chair of the Academy's International Committee, about the Academy's international work and upcoming participation in the International Congress of Actuaries in Tokyo this November. From Will, we'll hear about the Academy's broader international portfolio of issues that fall under the REMFRIC umbrella, while Lisa will discuss the International Committee and the importance of engaging in key industry topics beyond the nation's borders. Will and Lisa, welcome to Actuary Voices. I'm going to turn first to Will to help set the stage. So, Will, many international issues fall under the umbrella of the Prudential Regulation Committee. Can you just explain to listeners what this committee is and how it relates to international issues?
Of course. Thanks, Ted. So generally, prudential regulation is centered around solvency and covers topics like capital, asset liability management, group supervision, and emerging risks like climate and cyber. So the American Academy of Actuaries Prudential Regulation Committee, or PRC, drives the Academy's efforts on solvency and capital issues while serving as the primary resource on these topics across all practice areas, including life, health, property and casualty, as well as some retirement and pension. It provides expert input to the national and international bodies, responding to regulatory requests from the perspective of U.S. actuaries, as well as engaging in crucial matters that, both insurance companies and regulators care about and are interested in. So this engagement is crucial as more and more insurers become multinational corporations and creates a need to build a common language and comparability across jurisdictions that regulators in different countries can trust each other's read on a multinational insurer's condition without forcing every country into an identical regulation or identical system. So the committee engages with international bodies through comment letters, conversations, and technical papers to ensure that the U.S. actuarial perspective and the realities of the U.S. state-based system are represented at the global level.
Great. I appreciate those insights. Drilling down, what are some of the key issues the PRC works on?
So recently, prior to the establishment of the Academy's cross-practice RBC task force, the PRC was engaging with the NAIC on their revision of the RBC, or risk-based capital preamble. A couple other issues they've worked on are related to the group capital standards and have recently provided input on how climate risk can be incorporated in solvency supervision. Like I mentioned before, the cross-practice membership of the committee enables the members to respond and represent lines across the insurance industry and be a resource on a wide variety of topics.
But beyond the PRC, what other REMFRIC committees follow internationally?
So the main other committee that is heavily involved internationally is the Financial Reporting Committee, or the FRC. One of the key international topics they regularly engage with and track is the international financial reporting coordination between international regulators. So that includes, various insurance accounting standard setters as well. A number of other REMFRIC committees get involved in different international issues as they come up and as are relevant for that committee. So AI is a great example. Recently, the AI Data Science and Analytics Committee has responded to various international requests for information. But the PRC and the FRC are the main committees that regularly monitor and engage what's happening internationally.
Okay. Well, Wolf, thanks for filling us in, setting the stage there. I'm just going to turn to Lisa to discuss the International Committee and its role in ensuring the Academy's focus on global issues and making sure they're well coordinated and strategically directed. So to begin, Lisa, why did the Academy decide to create an international committee?
Well, the Academy, as you have heard from Will, follows international matters. So there is international work going on and has been for years. In addition, our leadership interacts with members of the international actuarial community through special meetings or attending various conferences where these international leaders are. But we recognize that to fulfill our mission to serve the public and the U.S. actuarial profession, we need to understand and be aware of what's going on internationally. And all that's been going on. But the efforts over the past few years have been those of what I would call a humble player on this stage. When in my role as president of the Academy, I was asked, what's the Academy doing internationally? There is little recognition of what we have been doing, all these comment letters that have come out of the PRC or other RIMFRC committees. As the board contemplated this quiet approach the Academy was having, it established the International Committee to provide a cross-practice focus on what we are doing internationally, look at our international involvement more holistically, and as a byproduct, promote what it is we're actually doing internationally, as well as promote the Academy internationally.
When actuaries think of their role globally, do they understand the landscape that encompasses what are called supranationals as well as international actuarial organizations?
Well, it's tricky to answer that question because a great number of Academy members work for companies or firms that have an international presence. That does not mean they're working every day on international matters or assignments or international companies, but at a moment's notice, they could be working on an international assignment or be interacting with their peers in other countries. As these actuaries interact beyond their immediate work, they're going to start to be aware of non-US actuarial organization and non-US centric regulatory framework. So some actuaries are going to be aware a lot because of their everyday, but some might all of a sudden need to know based on their work. But financial reporting actuaries for global companies are very aware of the different financial reporting requirements outside the US. And that's partly why RIMFRC, the financial reporting groups, has taken the lead on much of our international work.
Well, what are some of the things those outside the actuarial community should understand about the Academy's international work, given the stakeholders we work with on policy matters tend to be more focused in the domestic arena?
Well, the Academy stakeholders outside the actuarial community do include, and this is who we think of, the NAIC, the Financial Accounting Standards Board, FASB, and the Fed, all of which look to the international community because they're worried about solvency and financial reporting, not just within our borders, but outside our borders as well. And as you listen to the areas that Will has talked about, where we are internationally active, a lot of those areas have a great deal of overlap with what these particular stakeholders are following as well internationally.
Well, just shift gears a little bit. We sort of have mentioned the upcoming ICA meeting in Tokyo in the fall. Several Academy volunteers will be participating in that, representing the Academy. And I just was wondering, why is it important for them to do so? Why is it important for the Academy to sort of have a more forward role than maybe in the past they've had at that particular meeting?
The International Congress of Actuaries occurs about every 4 years, just so that people who are not really aware of it know that. And the Academy has a lot of expertise to share with the international actuarial community. And having our volunteers on the program as Academy members and speakers highlights that. Throughout the world, the Academy's focus on professionalism is very well respected, and its focus on public policy is not quite as well understood. The U.S. is unique in having its credentialing organizations separate from its professionalism and public policy organization. And we're also unique among countries in having such a strong public policy focus. So our speakers are ambassadors for us and for what we have to offer. We have a panel of speakers highlighting the self-regulatory environment of the U.S., focusing on our standards and discipline process. We also have a panel of speakers on artificial intelligence.
You mentioned AI, artificial intelligence, obviously, will be the focus of what volunteers from the Academy will be talking about. Why do you think our AI speakers were selected?
Okay, as I said, there were 2 panels, but our one that's more public policy focused is the AI panel. And there are numerous on the program for the ICA, numerous AI speakers. And because that's a big deal right now. But our speakers were selected for the perspectives they bring. Our speakers are talking about professionalism relative to AI, regulation relative to AI, as well as the interaction of AI and climate. And so that's a slightly different perspective than some of the other speakers that are speaking on AI. And it speaks towards what we at the Academy focus on, professionalism and public policy.
I also understand that Academy Research Director Steve Jackson will be presenting at the ICA. What can you tell us about what he's going to be speaking about?
He's going to be speaking on research he's done over the years and currently working on relative to scalars. And that deals with components of regulatory capital requirements. And this is of particular interest, not just in the U.S. regulatory environment and relative to U.S. regulatory capital, but relative to the capital for insurance companies with international operations. And as Will was talking about before, the focus on solvency when you talk about capital is of universal interest. And Will has talked about that a lot of what we do over in RIMFRIC in interacting internationally has to do with solvency. So Steve Jackson's research is really very much a part of what we're about in what we follow to date internationally.
We've touched upon a few different issues during this conversation we're having here, but what are some other topics beyond those that have been mentioned that are being discussed by actuaries and their stakeholders globally?
Well, we talk about this in our international committee meetings, and then also when our leadership has what are called bilaterals with actuaries in representing other organizations throughout the world. The issues beyond AI, which is up there, are the affordability of insurance, and that is all types of insurance with highlights on property casualty insurance, retirement security, because actuaries play a big role relative to retirement security, as well as healthcare. These are all topics that we at the Academy focus on. So you're all familiar with them if you've been following the Academy at all over the last few years. And so we can bring that into these international discussions. So our committees that deal with affordability, retirement security, and healthcare are asked to participate when there is a global issue that focuses on that topic area. Our international committee is not meant to supplant the subject matter expertise of all of our Academy volunteers in these various areas.
Beyond the November ICA meeting, what role do you see the International Committee playing for the Academy going forward?
Well, the International Committee was very excited to have the project over the past year of putting forth and applying to be on the program for the ICA. And it was a great win for our committee to have to do something and actually have it come to fruition in having our speakers selected. But as I stated at the beginning, that was not the only goal of the International Committee. We're there to help keep a holistic focus on our international efforts, and in doing so, make sure that we do actually have international efforts and that they're recognized so that we can speak to it and have all of this in one place.
Well, I appreciate all this discussion we've been having here, Lisa, and will thank you. I did sort of have one possible follow-up. I mean, we obviously, in many different realms, both in our industry and outside of it, we talk about being in a much more interconnected world, a more global world. And I wondered, I guess, Lisa, maybe more towards you, what do you think is making us more global? Is it technology, or is it going beyond that? Other aspects making us, the Academy, participating in ICA and creating the International Committee and such?
Well, the technology has often made it easier to communicate globally in that we can communicate without having to be in person globally. But you have to remember, the insurance industry has always had some global aspects to it because our reinsurance, we've often looked to reinsurance in other countries. You think of Lloyd's in particular, who has had a presence among many of our insurers as part of the reinsurance program, or you hear it there. But it's a recognition that it's all part of the same world. So I think it's more just focusing on it and putting the light on it, and that it's easier to communicate it rather than that global things are new.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, Lisa and Will, for a very insightful discussion. For listeners to learn more about the Academy's International Committee, I invite you to read the latest Policy Compass column in the July-August edition of the Contingencies magazine, which is available at www.actuary.org. While at our homepage, you should also learn more about all the great work REMFRIC is doing as well in these international matters and beyond. My name is Ted Gotsch, and I'm pleased to have had the opportunity to host this episode of Actuary Voices, the podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. Visit our website at actuary.org to learn more about all we do here at the Academy. You can also follow us on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast at your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.